tabletop game lovers, and welcome to a special episode of Rough Start, where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role-playing game each episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, a collection of many more professional GMs for hire as well. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our GMs, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon, the link is in the doobly-doo. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role-playing games, and tonight, my guest is...
Hi, folks, I'm Dano. I am the publishing paladin, as it were, for Rough Magic Games, as well as one of those professional DMs for hire.
I am so happy to have you on the show, Dano. Before we get into it, have you been playing any cool games lately?
I've been playing.
Variety.
I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 lately.
AJ said the same thing last episode.
It's hard to find somebody who's not at the moment. That's where a lot of my time has been lying when I have the free time. It's very easy to stay in the TTRPG mindset with Baldur's Gate and just sit and make choices.
Yes, but where else have you been spending your time? On what projects, as may be relevant to this episode?
So I have been busy on the publishing aspect, doing building the game system for both a one-shot collaboration with Revolution Brewing, as well as our upcoming God Vein event near the end of October. We'll leave it there for the moment.
Yeah. I think we've got a little slide for God Vein as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this collaboration with Revolution Brewing, super cool. It's actually also up on the YouTube page, so if you hear about it for right now and are interested in taking a look, it is up for viewing, and it's really good. I watched it the other day, and
nice.
I thought it was lovely. I thought it was great.
It's a cute little thing. Like,
yeah.
Just over 2 hours, so not no, just under 2 hours. So not much of your day.
Yeah, no, it's super fun. And what is God Vein?
Okay, how do we start into God Vein? So God Vein is more of the setting for this event. The idea behind the setting and the world is at the brink of a revolution, a brink of a change. And it's unclear whether or not that revolution coming is going to be a magical revolution or an industrial revolution. But the energies of the world and possibly worlds are beginning to coalesce, and folks are finding themselves with new abilities. The idea of a God Vein is similar to some other games or media that you might be aware of, where something sparks within you and suddenly you find yourself with new traits, new abilities, and each of these veins lead themselves to different attributes, to different functionalities. So far, for the moment, they're best described in colors. So we have a combination of red, yellow, green, blue, and purple God Veins.
It's giving Magic the Gathering.
It gives so I play a lot of Magic at the Gathering, so there are hints of that in there. But the basis is this is going to lead very much into like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but there are few folks left in the world that have the ability to obtain all the God Veins, all 5 God Veins. And there's a debate whether or not you are able to unleash all of your God Veins naturally, or if you need to take them unnaturally. So there are folks who have earned their right to a God Vein, or those who have taken it by force. And that's what we're leading up to with this event. Perhaps there are some folks out there that are willing to do what it takes to become some of the last few God Vein. But in the prehistory for this event, we've got very few of those god veins remaining, and those that are remaining are quickly dying out. And so
Gotcha.
what's going to happen to magic and the vein like abilities when all of these god veins are gone? Basically the religions have been placed or been replaced with those that might lead their specific veins, or if there are folks who have multiple veins in them remaining, where are they currently? And our event is meant to take place at the brink of that change.
That sounds fascinating. And I believe Godvane is the immersive dining experience,
It
right?
is.
So
So
there will be mystery and intrigue in game and also delicious food.
exactly. So we're partnering with, I believe we've announced it at this point. It is partnering with Funeral Potatoes to bring an immersive TTRPG and dining experience to folks. Give them a little bit of something that they might not be able to encounter otherwise. Um, Very much in the style of immersive theater, plus some gaming, plus stories that you are able to sculpt along the way. My intention for Godvane is to keep it as a setting for the future, by using the Cascade system as a basis. Um, but the events that take place at this dining event should help dictate the prehistory for the setting to come.
Ooh,
As I mentioned,
shaping the
we're
lore a little bit.
exactly. We're at that brink of change, and those that attend the event help dictate the history that we're going to be springing off from. Uh, so if good succeeds, great, we'll start there. If bad succeeds, awesome, we'll also start there. And that should help create a memorable and unique experience for the players, for the GMs even, um, and give us a good, I'll say, organic source of history from which to pull.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, so you mentioned the system, you're calling it Cascade.
Hmm.
And tonight on Rough Start, that's what we are going to be diving into, kind of the basics on how to play Cascade. So if you are interested in the Godvane event or anything that comes after, you have a little bit of a head start on the rules. So yeah, let's dive into that.
Sure.
So we just talked a little bit about the lore of Godvane, and it sounds like the Cascade system itself is pretty setting agnostic. So it sounds like someone could maybe take the rules and do what they want with it as well.
That is the hope behind the system itself. So throughout the combination of building for the Godvane event and our collaboration with Revolution on their one shot, I took this as an opportunity to create a system that should be able to branch across multiple settings. The idea being that the Cascade system should be able to take some enjoyable parts of certain TTRPGs or other games and be able to meld them together and make it a little bit more free flowing, a little bit less crunchy in its rules, and let the narrative and the stories shine more than, all right, I'm this far away from this creature. What are the things that I can do at this point to help with combat? Not to say that combat isn't important, but the rules should lend themselves to a little bit more ease of play. The basis for creating said setting or said system was the idea that somebody should be able to take the one shot with Revolution or come to the Godvane event in which there will be like 5 different courses of meals, be able to sit down at the table, pick up a d20, have a sheet in front of them that is like no bigger than an index card, and be able to play a full-fledged experience from that. My basis with other TTRPGs is, for example, 5e. You have multiple character sheets you're taking a look at. Nothing against 5e; it does what it does very well. But
And you can
sometimes
be a
I,
hater on this show. It's
yeah,
totally acceptable.
I'm trying to be as even keeled as I can. But for those of us that have been running 5e events for Rough Magic Plays, having somebody show up for a one shot in one evening without any basis of what the character is, or for example, this might be my first night playing 5e. I'm not well acquainted with the rules.
Yes, I've
5e
definitely
is
run into that issue. Having a new player at the table be like, "Well, okay, we're gonna do our best to teach you how to do everything, but it, it might take a little while."
it's going to take a lot. Um, and to sit there and look at 2 to 3 separate pages of rules and numbers and feats and abilities and weapons and spells, it is a lot for somebody to take in when they're going to be putting 2 to 3 hours in for this evening, want to sit and enjoy themselves, and they might be sitting there worrying and stressing about the character sheet in front of them and not paying attention to the story that's being told.
Yeah.
So it Cascade is very much a redux of certain game systems. One of my bases is 5e. Like, work with what you know.
Hey,
Another source of inspiration would be the Blades in the Dark system, which I
which we
hear
just talked about
you
on
just
Rough
did.
Start last episode. So we're building people. We've got the foundation, we've got the building blocks, and now we're talking about more new stuff.
I've
Um,
been so excited to play Blades in the Dark and just get into that narrative experience, and just the free flow nature and the speed at which that game plays is amazing. My other basis is a game called Savage Worlds, which is another system agnostic or setting agnostic system that really dumbs down the DCs for a lot of these TTRPGs. Uh, in a mix between 5e and Savage Worlds, 5e you sit there and you're like, okay, I would like to lockpick this door. The GM can set that anywhere from a DC 10 to something rather menial to upwards of DC 30, which is almost quite literally impossible until you get to the end game, but that's a separate conversation. Savage Worlds keeps things very easy in that your attributes are based on your size of your dice. And you've got anything from unskilled, where you have a 1d4 minus 2, through the levels of dice up to a d12. And that DC constantly for trying to get something accomplished is a 4. If you can roll a 4, great. That's amazing. That you do the thing and you move on. Now they have a little bit different of systems where uh, if you, for example, are have a 1d4 in your thing, it's kind of hard to hit that 4, but you can keep acing your dice. If you hit the maximum amount on that dice, you just keep rolling until you stop hitting that max and keep
yeah,
counting what your total is.
there's
My
to kids on bikes or kids with
Yeah.
brooms as well. Yeah.
Um, so the goal was to make something where the DCs are a little bit easier to hit and yet keep that D20 feel, and basically just continue to make it where if you are sitting down at a bar somewhere, all you have to worry about is the D20. Even when I'm sitting there and DMing my own one shots or my own campaigns for 5e, if I run into a new player, it's like, you know what? Don't worry about the things on the sheet. Tell me what you want to do. 99% of the time, you're rolling that d20 anyway. I will let you
Mhm.
know whether or not you need to reference something else or if you need to roll a different die. I'm just going to take the different dice out of the equation and make it great. Here's your d20. Here's your card. From there, it's your imagination.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah. So now we've talked about the inspirations a little bit. We've talked about the D20. So it sounds like the main mechanic for Cascade is rolling a D20 and seeing what happens.
Yep.
Awesome. People who are familiar with 5e will probably recognize some similarities. I noticed that you've got advantage and disadvantage
Yep.
in your rules as well. Take 2d20, take the better one or the worst one. But I also noticed there were numerical bonuses, which I enjoy. Dodging, for example, I believe imposes a -5 to attacks against you, as opposed to just like in 5e, it would just impose
Impose
disadvantage.
disadvantage. I've been trying to be very picky about when advantage and disadvantage happens. Those of us that are a little bit more well versed in 5e, you can get advantage a lot of different ways. Even if you
Yeah.
play without the flanking mechanic, there are just so many ways for you to inherently gain advantage or receive disadvantage. And so there is a point where you can set these DCs for these checks, but by a certain point, your characters are just hitting those DC 20s nonstop. You've got your own numerical bonuses, and you've got advantage and disadvantage, where you can pretty much have advantage on every check. What's the point?
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of the 5e rule sets that are currently still in Cascade at the moment while I test this out and see what is a good fit. I felt like something where the dodge action could lend yourself to something that didn't quite do disadvantage. Those that have done the math on 5e, advantage is essentially like a +4 tier check
Yeah,
on average. So disadvantage should be something similar. And I figured if -5 fits well into our scaling system, um, to where you're not really hitting those successes, you might be pushed down to as intendeds, or if you're really rolling as intendeds, that'll push down to the failure and be just enough to get you out of harm's way.
perfect. Yeah. Well, speaking of at the as intended success, so it sounds like in similar way to Savage Worlds, you said very similar to Blades in the Dark or Powered by the Apocalypse games. It sounds like
Mm.
there are levels of success, like a partial success, a full success. What are the like? What's the range on failures and successes?
So the range on failures and successes, as written right now, basically you have 1 through 8 is your failures.
Mhm.
By the time you get to 9 through 13, you have your as intended result. Going back to that lock picking a door. I want to get through the door. If I do the as intended and I roll a 9, perfect. The intention was to open the door. Door's open. By the time you get to 14 and above is where you get the successes, and this is where you start having the little bit crunchier rules, I guess. Um, in the difference between a check and a saving throw for 5e, for example, is really the intention of who's doing said action in the Cascade system. If my intention is to attack you, Charlotte, and hit you with a melee attack, all I really need is a 9. My intention is to hit you. I'm in your face. It's probably a little bit easier for me to strike you. But if you're doing something like casting a fireball at me, your intention is to hit me with said fireball, right? And so for me to roll an as intended on my success chart is not quite good enough. The intention is still there from the caster initially to throw said fireball and catch me on fire. I need to roll a success here. I really need to get out of that path and uh, hit that success to maintain my safety. Um, but in that redux of 5e, I eliminate stuff like the if you make a save, take half. We're full all or nothing here because we have that sliding success system, um, to where you can avoid danger at a moment's notice. Or what I've been doing for most of my players for campaigns and one shots is I offer that sliding success already on like information checks.
For sure.
Nothing for me is worse than hiding information behind a check and having an entire table roll a history check. Nobody's going to roll it. I want to give you that information. Let me just give you that information.
We could talk about that aspect of TTRPGs for 5 hours.
For a really
I
long time.
swear to God. No, I definitely do a similar thing when with information. I someone rolling for information will always get something no matter what. It
Mhm.
just they might get more based on how well they roll, but like you got to keep the game moving. You got to get information flowing. Being too withholding with information is like a GM's worst nightmare.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's excellent. In the fireball situation, would
Yeah.
rolling a failure and a partial success, or as intended, be the same thing because the intention for the caster is to cast fireball at you?
Yes.
Okay.
So for the person making said save, a failure and an as intended would essentially be the same kind of check. So your DCs at that point are like I want to make a melee attack, DC's 9.
Yeah,
If I'm avoiding said fireball, DC's now suddenly 14. Um, but it also depends on what other traits or other functions are in said ability. If my fireball has a talking about like theoretical conditions at this point, as I'm still creating, if it had a burning mechanic, some similar to like immolation as a spell, um, I might attach that to all right. So please make a visceral check to dive out of the way. Uh, please make a successful visceral check to dive out of the way. If you roll a failure, that's where the burning might come in. Or like casting Sunbeam, like please roll a Constitution save. On a failure, that's where the blind sets in.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It's just a new way of thinking for a lot of folks, and once you start diving into it, like it gets easier.
Yeah, I do enjoy like the levels of failure and success. When a game has that, I'm like, oh yes, let's let's do
Uh,
more of that, please.
on the topic of like, I could talk on tangents for a while. It's that players and GMs have a fear of failure these days, and failure is okay. Failure is acceptable. Failure is an option. Um, and that is definitely one of my goals with the Cascade system, that failure is okay.
Yes, I was I wish I could remember who tweeted this, but I can't. Someone was tweeting about failures in Powered by the Apocalypse games, where it's not really about if you failed the task, it's about who has narrative control in that moment,
Mhm.
the GM or the players. And I think that's a really great way of looking at it, and I think I'm getting similar vibes from Cascade, the way that you're talking about it, like more about narrative control and what's going to be more interesting in this moment, rather
Right.
than you did Fireball take 36 damage, you know?
It's super easy to kill the players if you want. As the GM, you have control.
Yeah.
But it is so much more interesting to see what interesting choices people will take. And hopefully the sliding success scale should be able to lend more toward that, and make more interesting narrative choices rather than the hard and fast, you're up, you're down, you're dead.
Absolutely. Well, one more thing on the sliding sliding scale of success and failure. A rule I noticed that I thought was very cool was that you can exert yourself to upgrade a failure to
Yeah.
to a little bit better. Um, which I am currently working through Call of Cthulhu 7th edition
Mhm.
for a project people might see on this channel later in October for Halloween. Keep your eyes out. And they have a very similar mechanic where if you fail a roll, you can push yourself to try and do it again, but there might
Mhm.
be a consequence to failing the second roll. Yeah, so I love that, and I love that the consequence for exert is to take a level of exhaustion, which works a little bit differently in Cascade
Just
than
a
in
little bit
D&D
differently.
5e, say. Yeah.
Uh, so it's almost a direct pull from Blades in the Dark, where it's a very similar mechanic. It's in the
Yes.
push mechanic, but there does have to be that level of consequence, right? Like you can change your narrative, as it were, but there has to be some sort of cost. And that is definitely something that I'm working on building, not only for the Godvane event, but Godvane or Cascade in its entirety in the future, on whether or not it stays with an exhaustion system, keeping it simple for folks who have played 5e for the Godvane event, or if it lends itself to a slightly different mechanic. My current thought moving forward is something like a fifth edition Wild Magic Surge, where if you exert yourself too often, you might gain enough of that cascade where you suddenly burst into something new. Um, but I have to figure those mechanics out. And the easy pull was the exhaustion levels, um, as well as those that have played 5e know that there are 6 exhaustion levels. I reduce it down to 5 for this one because I don't have saving throws. Um, but it makes it just a little bit more important because it should be a little bit easier to hit those exhaustion levels in that push mechanic.
Yeah. Blades in the Dark, the push mechanic in that is the consequence is taking stress,
Mhm.
as we we talked about last episode. Yeah, pushing yourself seems like it's got to have a consequence. And I think exhaustion for now, where the game stands in its in this moment of creation, I think that is perfectly serviceable.
Mhm.
And I'm happy that I'm getting to talk to you now, as like the rules are here, but there's some fine tuning to be done, and
There's
I
so
think
much
that's really
fine tuning to do.
exciting. But it's like we're watching like a game get born, and I think that I think that's cool, and I'm happy to share that with with whoever's watching right now.
There
So
are so
thank
many
you.
people who find an interest in creating games, and like I would like to write for games, for example, but just never have the outlet for it. And I was very fortunate growing up to where I was constantly surrounded by game creators, either game writers or writing for systems. Um, so I felt like I had a little bit of a leg up, but like definitely seeing something start to flesh itself out is fascinating.
I similarly, my little brother used to write games. You know, we would write games together, and I remember him showing me one time, and I was reading it, and I was like, "What's a dice pool?" Uh, and then after that, like the wide world of TTRPGs opened up after me, and I was like, "I know what dice pools are now." So,
I understand.
yeah. Is there anything else you want to add, kind of about like the basic structure, basic rules of Cascade before we take a little break?
No, nothing overall. It's once again, it's about telling a story. Like that is the most important thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we do it. We do it to have fun and we do it to tell a story. When we come back from our little break, we'll talk a little bit about combat, a little bit about how the stats in the game work, and maybe a little bit about characters as well.
Sure.
But for now, we will take a break and we'll see you on the other side. All right, we are back from our break. Welcome back to Rough Start, where we are talking about Cascade with Mike Danovich, aka Dano, the creator of Cascade, still in its infancy.
Mhm.
And we are going to hop into it. Before the break, we talked a little bit about rolling d20s. We talked a little bit about failures and successes. And now we are going to talk about combat a little bit. We hinted at some melee attacks and some spells. So what's the deal with combat, Dano? Tell me all about it.
Oh boy. So for those of us that have run 5e, combat can be sometimes a little bit long. You want to flesh out your combats with small minions, ads, as it were, for some of us that play video games, um, to help mitigate some of the action economy against bosses. But at the same time, like it becomes time consuming. Especially when you've been sitting there for a while and the GM is just sitting there rolling dice amongst themselves. You might have a combat where you're sitting there for a round, maybe half an hour goes by, and then it's your turn, and then you remember, oh wait, I should probably look at my spells now.
Yeah,
I'm
I
trying
think
to
we've
I'm
all
trying to
been
cut
there.
that.
I think we've all been there.
So it really is an effort to streamline combat. Um, we've got the same basics that you would in 5e. If I want to cast a spell, I'm going to describe the spell, and a check might be involved. If I want to make an attack, I might have a melee or ranged attack, but honestly, it's as easy as I would like to take this pint glass over to the side, throw it at the enemy. Perfect. You've described what you want to do. I've got a check for you to make. Let's go ahead and make it happen. If you roll a 9, boom, you hit it. Um,
Fantastic.
but in talking about the character sheets, I alluded to previously somebody showing up to a one shot and taking a look at their character sheet, and they might have any number of feats or abilities, depending on what level you might play. Like the
Yeah.
ones that we run for Rough Magic tend to be about 4th level, but you do get some players who want to play some higher level stuff, and to somebody not familiar with whatever that class might be, might not know all of those abilities, and you're trying to remember all that in combat, and when you go, and what the GM is doing with all the monsters or baddies. So the basis of the character sheets, as it pertains to combat, is I've reduced it down to two main things. You've got your attributes, which dictate what you're rolling when, but you've got essentially one static ability and one ultimate ability.
Yeah.
Something that you are able to do pretty well, usually all of the time. And then your big bad ultimate, that is once per day, you do something really cool. It doesn't really, I'm going to say it doesn't really matter what it is. It matters what it is. Of course it matters. You want to do the thing, let's do the thing. But one like show-stopping ability per day. Whether it's like, for example, we just did the Revolution one shot. I built character sheets off of the current League of Heroes that are coming out in the newest batch, as well as some legacy heroes that they've done in previous batches. The one that they had for this batch is their Medusa hero. Medusa, she has a bow. She does all the cool stuff. So I pulled from lore and what I know of Medusa, and her stone gaze. Cool. Once per day, she can activate her ability, look at some folks, and if they fail that check or don't succeed that check, I should say, they turn to stone. Easy enough.
Might be sacrilege to you. I don't know how you feel about fourth edition, but to me it sounds like fourth edition abilities that
uh, Not that I have any basis in fourth edition, so I can't say yes or no whether that is a thing. Um, all I know is what I'm pulling from. But everybody should have something that is really cool for them to do.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
for Infinity Hero, the basis is Infinity Hero is literally like weaving dimensions together, and so I took something as simple and powerful as a divination wizard being able to change a roll of a die. Infinity Hero is able to just change the results from at least initially, was changed from a failure to a success. But why couldn't it be the other way around? I finally had a player in one of my playtest sessions go, "Can I turn it to a failure?" You know what? Sure, why not? Great. So now it's once per day. Change that result. You don't have to exert
That
yourself for it. You're just able to modify the result into what you see fit for whatever you want the narrative to be.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like having a basic attack that it looks like it does just a static amount of damage. You don't have to
Mhm.
roll any dice for that. Which I can see like if you want to streamline, taking out some extraneous dice rolls is a good idea.
Yeah, it's back to that impulse of sitting down at a bar, picking up a character sheet, and just going with it.
Yeah, just like I
You have
hit
to
it, I
streamline
deal
some
4 damage
things.
at
Yep.
the end. Yeah.
And so a lot of my character sheet creation has also been in trying to streamline things as well. Here's the actions that you can take. Here's the conditions you might run into. Here is your static damage. You want to make an attack? Boom. How much do you deal? You don't have to worry about which dice you're rolling when or how much you add to the dice. Once again, not poo pooing it, but like it's a lot to think about for somebody who's a little bit newer to the system.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that, like that ethos of keep it simple. In the character sheet, it's a
Mhm.
very simple, streamlined character sheet for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of character sheets, let's talk a little bit about the stats in the game,
Yeah.
because you're rolling a d20, but what does that mean? So it looks like we've got some stats: visceral, social,
Mhm.
organic, arcane, and portent, which I love as a name. And then it looks like ranges from -1 to +1.
Mhm.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how these stats work.
Uh, so in keeping with the theme of pulling from 5e, you've got some one-to-one uh, correlations. I'm going to fault for the right word here, but it's almost a direct result of 5e. You've got your visceral stat, which is really based in the physical nature of it. Extreme passion. I've been equating it more with impulse lately. It should be very similar to your strength stat. You've got your social, which should be very much like charisma. How well are you able to read an audience? How well are you able to influence somebody? You have your organic trait, which is very much like constitution. Um, we've been pulling for the God Vein event. The green veins tend to be nature based. Um, Nature based classes do nature based things. But there's the idea of also being able to instill life in something or to instill free will into something. So for like the 5e spells, you have like animate dead. It's technically a necromancy spell, but I would declare it's probably an organic check in this. Or if you are trying to weave that spell together and be a little bit more magical influence over said creature, object, being, whatever it might be, that would be your arcane check. Very much your spell casting ability. And then you have your portent, which I alluded to, like divination wizard, being able to pick up on omens, see the tea leaves for what they are, pick up the wind rustling between the amongst the trees and the leaves. How well are you able to foresee an event coming? So portent would be very similar to your dexterity saving throws or a perception check.
Mhm.
Is typically what I've been doing for at least my playtest sessions is trying to just pick up the signs.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got your hit points, your initiative, which is populated off of your portent score. Um, but
Got that static damage there too, I
static
see.
damage, yep. Um, but it's still trying to figure out where the numbers come from and what's going to be most helpful. Since we are going for something like a DC 9, like having a +4 to something means I could roll as low as a 5 and still succeed.
Yeah.
So I have to keep those numbers a little bit low at the moment, especially since we're feeling like level 3, maybe level 4 characters at this point. Um, where we're not too experienced, but we know we can do just enough to get by in an adventure. But we're not completely blowing all of these things out of the water.
Yeah. To me,
Um,
this looks visually very much like a Powered by the Apocalypse game with
mhm.
these like, the stats with the pluses and the negatives. Um with the visceral in this example being bold, does the bold mean like is this like the specialty of this character is visceral, or is there any meaning to the bold
The bold
font?
is you are going to have your attacking stat. So if you would like to make an
Mm,
attack, it is based off of this bold stat. And you're going to have
gotcha.
one of two options, whether or not it's going to be visceral or arcane. So this one was pulled from a visceral type character. Offhand, this is visceral +1, social, was it -1?
One, yeah.
Portent +1. This is probably one of my red vein characters. So a visceral type. Um, is that 30 or 35 movement speed?
35.
That is that is likely one of that's probably like the gladiator for the upcoming Godvane event. Um, which should be very similar to the Valkyrie hero in the Revolution one shot. Um, Now, when we're talking about lore and system agnostic and whether or not the visceral or arcane is a more important thing, I've been leaving it up to the players for the most part on whether their characters have magic or not. Um, and if you want to make it free flowing, great. If you want to be like I'm a pure mage type character, perfect. Arcane might be up your alley. If you're doing something like I'm a big beefy barbarian, visceral might be right up your alley. But you could do something like a battle mage, and I have a couple of those built so far for this event, where they're able to slide between both. It's just that I need an attacking stat somewhere, and visceral and arcane tend to lend themselves toward more damage dealing slash attacking type situations.
Gotcha. Yeah. Makes sense to me. I think I did grab this screenshot from Valkyrie Hero.
Most likely, yeah.
So yeah. So with the numbers, is this a situation where I know you're doing like pre-generated characters
Hmm.
for this right now? If someone wanted to make their own character, would this be a situation where they're like, I've got 2+1s to put anywhere, I've got 1 - 1 to put anywhere, or
That
how
is
are
the
you assigning
idea.
numbers?
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so this setup, I'm finding out, is very similar to another TTRPG. If you haven't checked it out, Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
Yes, which is a
And
Powered by the Apocalypse game.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, in being able to dictate, like, you do something a little bit better, you do something a little bit worse. That trade off. I grew up on a system called GURPS, where
Hmm.
you also have those pluses and minuses. You can keep taking bonuses, but you got to take the negatives or the quirks that go with them to give yourself the points available. In making the pregens for these events, I had been doing a +1 differential, so that they can do like two things pretty well, two things kind of okay, and then one thing that they might want to take a back seat on.
Right.
Um, and depending on the character sheet and when I started making them, like that +1 differential is still there for the most points. Um, if it were coming down to somebody wanted to make their own character sheet and I need to start setting something in the system for it when I eventually work on the source book, um, it would start out with something very similar to that differential.
Great. All right. I think we're almost at the end of our little show here. Is there anything else you want to add about Cascade, how it works, characters, anything you want, Dano? The floor is yours.
Uh, anything else I want to talk about? No. Um, for as much work has been done on this, I'm always of the mindset that there's always more to work on, always more to improve, and so I'm constantly reanalyzing things on Cascade. So likely the version that you are seeing now is there will be hints of it later on. There might be large parts of it, there might be small parts of it. Who knows where it'll end up by the time I've worked most of the nitty gritty details out. But for now, it's got a fairly solid finish to it. The theory is back there, but odds are I'm going to be working on this for a while yet to come. Um,
the show's called Rough Start, so I think actually you've got
Where
a
else are you
pretty
gonna start?
polished start. I think it's a pretty good start so far, honestly.
All I'll mention is if you have an interest in Cascade or want to check out the Godvane event, or hell, want to hit me up for the Revolution one shot, like yes, it's something I wrote, but also it's meant to be played. Um, like feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Feel free to hit me up on Discord. I'm always available on the Rough Magic Discord. Or just, send me a message. Hey, what's up? If I want to learn more about Cascade, or hey, where's the process coming? Or anything of that nature. Like I'm always available for uh, just hit me with advice, questions regarding 5e, TTRPGs, whatever it might be.
Heard it here first, folks. Bug Dano at any chance you get. Uh, Excellent. Yes. If you are interested in checking out the one shot that Dana ran with Revolution Brewing, that is up on the channel right now, and you can go watch it immediately after this. Godvane is coming up later this month in October. If you're interested, you can find out more information in the description below. Once again, there's going to be food by the Chicago legends, dare I say, Funeral Potatoes. And it is sure to be an amazing, immersive time. So check out all that information below. Yeah, I am excited for you. I can't wait to hear how it goes. I think the next time you'll see me on Rough Start will be on Halloween. I'm going to be talking about Call of Cthulhu with the lovely GM Cassie from the Lovely Craftians podcast. I cannot wait, and I will see you all there. All right, say bye, Dano. I think we're done.
Say bye, Dano. I think we're done.